Joined by Ekim Alptekin, who has worked in counter-terrorism at Interpol headquarters. He's also served as a fellow on the Foreign Relations Committee in the US House of Representatives, and he is currently a director on the board of Turkey US Business Council. Thanks so much for joining us on the program. First of all, tell us a bit more about Antifa's involvement with the YPG in Syria.
Well, Antifa is a global network of loosely organized radical left-wing groups, as Ubey just mentioned. In some Western cities, a lot of well-intentioned young people in college join these groups, but some of them really get radicalized and they join other terrorist groups like the YPG. As you know, YPG is the Syrian branch of the PKK, which already has a terrorist designation. YPG conveniently does not share that designation, but in a sense it's the same organization. And they have a brigade or battalion, if you will, that has about 400 or 500 of these Antifa members. They call it YPG International. Originally, the intention was actually to call it the Antifa Brigade. Probably because of branding, they didn't like that, so they call it YPG International. So essentially, and it's not the only place where these people fought throughout the world. They feed on situations like these, whether it's global protests or some of these civil wars. It essentially means that they have a network of people who are well-trained to counter police forces and military forces. And that's the danger that we see now in the United States.
And you've worked at Interpol headquarters in counterterrorism. What do you make of President Trump's announcement that he would designate Antifa as a terror group domestically?
Well, I think it's an international terror group. I don't think it's correct to call them a domestic terror group. And I think President Trump is for law and order, and he will come out of this stronger, but he needs to be careful not to make the mistake of confusing legitimate protesters with these radical left-wing terrorist groups. And I think a lot of young people who are demonstrating use the logo and wear the outfits of these Antifa movements without necessarily having a link to their international branch. So that's a very difficult thing to do. Law enforcement in the United States is well equipped to do this if they want to. But it's not a very easy task, and I think they should focus on the international angle. They're very lucky that there are no flights now. I mean, there's a silver lining of the corona crisis, because a lot of the more radical people would be flying in right now. We've seen this happen many times when there are protests like these. The more sort of battle-hardened radical elements would be flown in. They're well-organized, well-financed. They know what they're doing. And I think at least with the flights not being an option now, that's the silver lining of the corona situation.
And tell us a bit more about their international involvement.
Well, they are not organized top-down, so they're a network. I mean, in a sense, Al-Qaeda is also not organized fully top-down. So there are a lot of people who identify themselves, who get recruited by one person who then leaves them with a set of skill sets that they then use to recruit other people. And we're seeing this in many Western European cities as well. As you probably know, Antifa started in the same street where the Nazis started. So they were fighting together with the Nazis, the Social Democrats in Germany. A lot of these young people don't know this, so they're often fooled by this ideology. And then the name, of course, is confusing, because when you say Antifa, a lot of young people think, you know, being an anti-fascist is a good thing, and I would agree with that. The problem is they think everything in the free market system is fascism. And we've seen when Antifa started, and the logo that's still being used today is that of the Antifascistische Aktion, as it was called in Germany. It was so radical. It was firstly a Stalinist organization that was also financed by Stalin. And they were together with Nazis fighting the Social Democrats. And it actually helped the Nazis get to power, because the average German citizen was so tired of these Antifa people that they actually opted for the Nazis. So it's a very dangerous dynamic that we're already seeing now happening in some of the Western cities, where a lot of average citizens get so tired of these protests getting completely out of control that they end up backing the exact opposite of what the protesters initially wanted.
Ekim Alptekin, thank you so much for your analysis. Really appreciate it.